All right, so get this. We're going to take a deep dive today into something pretty heavy, Christianity and politics in America.
Yeah.
We've got clips from the Casey Malone show, some historical analysis, even a Super Bowl halftime performance.
Oh, wow.
Like, all this stuff is connected. You ready to, like, have your mind blown a little bit?
I am. I
Yeah.
am. I'm fascinated to see how these things connect. It's a very interesting topic.
For sure.
Yeah.
So Malone starts off her show with this idea of atonement rituals.
Okay.
And I always thought of atonement rituals as, like, ancient history, right? Like sacrificing a goat to, like, please the gods or something.
Right.
But Malone kind of flips it on its head.
Oh.
And she's like, no, it's more about this, like, psychological need for a savior. Like, we as humans, we want someone to blame.
Yeah. It's about shifting the responsibility.
Yes.
Not taking responsibility for your own actions.
Yeah. So she talks about the Aztecs with their bloodletting rituals and even like the scapegoat in Judaism where you like send a goat out into the wilderness to like carry away the sins of the people.
Yeah, that's a really good example of that.
Yeah.
It's like a very tangible way to sort of externalize
Yeah.
your sin or your guilt.
So then Christianity comes along and throws like a wrench in the system
Uh-huh.
with Jesus, right? Like Jesus is like the ultimate
The
scapegoat.
ultimate scapegoat.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that's when it shifts, right? Christianity sort of shifts from action-based atonement
Oh, interesting.
to faith-based atonement.
Yeah.
So it's not about what you do anymore, it's about what you believe.
So it's like easier to control.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that Malone points out, that it becomes like a lot more scalable because you don't have to perform these rituals, right?
Yeah.
You just have to believe.
Oh, so then the church becomes super powerful because they're the ones that are like the gatekeepers of belief in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Solidifying the doctrine.
Yeah.
We talked about the Council of Nicaea in 325.
Yes.
That's when they're really starting to codify the Bible
Okay.
and solidify, what is Christianity, what we believe.
I mean, does this sound familiar to you at all? Like this idea of like, we need a savior. We need someone to fix things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that we see throughout history, this desire for an external savior.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that's very deeply ingrained in the human psyche.
Yeah. And so Malone's point is that like this can be really dangerous.
Yeah.
Because it creates this cycle of dependence, right? Like you're always looking for someone else to save you, to absolve you. You don't have to take responsibility for your own actions.
And it discourages critical thinking.
Right. Yes.
Because if you're always looking to someone else for the answers,
Yeah.
you're not really thinking for yourself.
So, I mean, like, could this explain why some Christian groups are so intensely loyal to certain political figures?
Absolutely. I think it plays a huge role.
Yeah.
And this brings us to the rise of Christian nationalism. This movement that's really gaining traction in America,
Yes.
where they basically are merging religious and national identities. They're saying America was divinely chosen,
Oh, wow.
that we need to be saved from, secularism,
Say from diversity.
from diversity.
Yeah. But I thought, like, America was founded on this idea of separation of church and state.
You're absolutely right. The founding fathers were very clear about that.
Yeah.
But Christian nationalism is rewriting history to fit their narrative.
Yeah.
They're saying, no, America was meant to be a Christian theocracy.
So, are they twisting history
I mean, that's one way to put it, yes.
to justify their agenda?
Exactly. And this distortion of history is a key tactic used to gain power and influence.
Okay, so this is where Donald Trump comes in, right?
Right.
Malone argues that he expertly tapped into this like pre-existing desire for a savior.
Absolutely. Especially among white evangelicals.
Yeah.
His rhetoric, things like, I alone can fix it. Very much in line with, that messianic language that we see in some religious leaders.
Yeah, he presented himself as like the strong man, right? Like the only one who can save America.
Right. From its perceived enemies.
Yeah.
He really demonized the liberal elite.
The media.
The media, yes.
Yeah.
And it really created this sense of, moral panic, like America's under attack.
Like our way of life is being threatened.
Exactly. And this resonated deeply with those who felt like their values and beliefs were under siege.
And isn't it true that like 80% of white evangelical Christians voted for Trump
Yeah.
in both elections?
Both 2016 and 2020, yeah.
Yeah.
Which really shows you how much his message resonated with that demographic.
Yeah.
But what's really concerning to me?
What's that?
Is how this intertwining of faith and politics can erode democratic principles.
Well, I mean, think about January 6th, right? When the Capitol was attacked. a lot of those rioters, they were carrying Christian symbols.
Right.
They saw themselves as fighting a holy war.
Exactly. And that's a chilling example of how this ideology can be weaponized to justify violence and undermine democratic processes.
Malone seems pretty worried about where America is headed.
Yeah.
With this growing influence of Christian nationalism.
She is. She's very concerned.
She says we can't just, like, sit back and hope that things get better. Like, we need to actively resist.
She does.
What does that even look like?
Well, she emphasizes that resistance can take many forms.
Yeah.
From individual acts of defiance to collective action.
Okay.
It's about being informed, engaging in critical thinking,
Okay.
challenging the status quo.
So it's not just about voting.
Right.
Or protesting.
It's about questioning the narratives we're being fed.
Right.
Challenging the assumptions that underpin our beliefs. Being willing to have those difficult conversations with people who hold different viewpoints.
And I think what's interesting is she also says that finding joy is a form of resistance.
Yeah. I love that point.
Yeah.
Because if we lose sight of the things that bring us meaning and happiness, what are we even fighting for?
Yeah.
You know?
Right. It's not just about fighting against something, but also fighting for something.
Exactly.
And this leads us to another really interesting part of our sources for today, which is this idea of art as resistance.
Okay.
And this is where Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime performance comes in.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Malone argues that it was like this brilliant act of subversion. He was using this platform to challenge power dynamics. He was forcing viewers to confront some really uncomfortable truths about race and power in America.
He was so clever in how he did it.
Yeah.
You know, all the symbolism, the Uncle Sam figure, the revolution line, even the 40 acres and a mule reference.
Oh, wow.
You know, using the biggest stage in the world to spark a conversation about racial justice.
Yeah. And the unfulfilled promises of, American society.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the Super Bowl, right? Like the most American thing you can think of.
Yeah, it's so ingrained in American culture.
And he's like, I'm going to use this. Right.
To expose the hypocrisy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He took the symbol of American patriotism and used it to expose, the systemic inequalities that still exist.
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
But Malone argues that Lamar is not alone, right? There are a lot of artists throughout history who've used their platform
Absolutely.
to challenge things, to resist.
Yeah, and we're going to get into some of those examples
Okay.
in the next part of our deep dive.
This is getting really good. I can't wait to see where we go next.
Yeah, me too.
So we were just talking about Kendrick Lamar and how he kind of turned the Super Bowl into this platform for social justice.
Yeah.
But Malone says he's not the only one, right? She highlights a whole bunch of artists who've used their art to push back against the system.
Right. She talks about Banksy, Nina Simone, Pietro Di Donato, Pussy Riot. All these artists are using their platforms to challenge the status quo.
I've got to admit, I'm most familiar with Nina Simone. Her music is just incredible.
But I never really thought about it as resistance before.
It's easy to overlook the power of art, especially when there's so much political stuff going on.
Yeah.
But think about Simone's song, Mississippi Goddamn.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't just a song.
Right.
It was this raw expression of anger and frustration at the injustices faced by Black Americans during the Civil Rights Movement.
It still gives me chills every time I hear it.
Yeah.
It's just so powerful.
Right, and it's powerful because it's not shying away from the truth.
Yes.
No matter how uncomfortable it might be.
Yeah, and that's what makes art so effective. It can bypass all of our intellectual defenses and just speak directly to our hearts.
Right. It forces us to confront realities that we might otherwise try to ignore.
Okay, so how do the other artists that Malone talks about fit into this idea of art as resistance?
Well, let's take Banksy, for example.
Okay.
He's using street art to challenge our assumptions about the world.
Yeah.
His work often pops up in these unexpected places.
Yeah.
And it forces us to think about things like capitalism or social control.
He's the one who did that piece with the little girl letting go of the red balloon, right?
That's the one.
Yeah.
And that image is so simple, but it's so powerful.
Yeah.
It's become this global icon of hope and lost innocence.
Oh, wow.
It speaks to the ways that our dreams can be crushed by the forces around us.
It's amazing how art can be both simple and profound at the same time.
Right.
Okay, but what about Pietro Di Donato? I don't know his work.
Di Donato was an Italian-American writer, and his novel, Christ in Concrete,
Okay.
exposed the brutal working conditions faced by immigrant laborers in the early 20th century in America.
Oh, wow.
His book gave a voice to people who didn't have one.
Yeah.
It challenged the exploitation of the working class and forced readers to think about the human cost of capitalism.
So it was like social commentary,
Exactly.
bringing to light the struggles of a marginalized group.
And his work, while written decades ago, still resonates today.
Yeah.
As we grapple with issues of labor rights, economic inequality, the exploitation of immigrants.
It's crazy how some things never change.
It is.
Okay, and then there's Pussy Riot.
Yes.
I know they're known for their, like, really provocative performances.
Right.
But how does that fit into this conversation?
Well, Pussy Riot is a feminist punk rock group from Russia.
Okay.
And they're incredibly outspoken against Putin's regime and the Orthodox Church's support for him.
Wow.
Their performances, often held in public spaces without permission,
Oh, wow.
are a direct challenge to those in power.
I mean, that's incredibly brave considering what can happen to people who speak out against Putin.
It is. They've faced arrest, imprisonment, even violence for their activism.
Oh, wow.
But their art is a testament to the power of speaking truth to power,
Yeah.
even in the face of danger.
It's really amazing how all these artists from different backgrounds,
Different mediums.
working in different mediums, are all united by this idea of using their art to fight for justice.
It really shows the universality of the human spirit,
Yeah.
our innate desire to push back against injustice.
To strive for a better world.
And art provides a powerful vehicle for channeling those aspirations.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From ancient atonement rituals to modern-day political movements.
Yeah?
And now this idea of art as resistance.
I'm starting to see how these pieces fit together.
Yeah, me too. But I'm still kind of wrestling with this whole idea of personal responsibility.
Okay.
Like, what does that actually look like in a world where we're constantly bombarded with information?
Yeah.
And these larger forces seem to have so much control.
It's a valid question.
Yeah.
And it's definitely where things can feel really overwhelming.
Yeah.
But Malone's point is that even amidst these powerful forces, we still have agency.
Okay.
We still have the power to choose how we engage with the world.
So it's not about ignoring the reality of these forces, but more like recognizing our own role within them.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it starts with cultivating critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
Questioning the narratives that we're being fed, challenging the assumptions that underpin our beliefs,
Yeah.
being willing to have those difficult conversations with people who hold different viewpoints.
So you're saying it's about being an active participant in shaping our reality,
Yeah.
rather than just passively accepting whatever's thrown our way.
Exactly.
But it's hard, with the constant influx of news and opinions, it's hard to know where to even begin.
It can be really daunting.
Yeah.
But Malone suggests, starting with some simple things,
Okay.
pay attention to your sources of information.
Okay.
Are you getting your news from a variety of perspectives,
Right.
or are you stuck in an echo chamber?
Oh, yeah. Are you willing to listen to viewpoints that challenge your own beliefs?
Exactly. Or are you just dismissing anything that doesn't align with your worldview?
I think that's a great place to start, being more mindful of the information we're consuming.
Yeah.
And being willing to engage with different perspectives.
Absolutely.
But it's also about recognizing our own biases, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. We all come to the table with our own lived experiences, our own values, our own assumptions,
Right.
and those inevitably influence how we interpret the world around us.
So it's about embracing humility,
Yeah.
admitting that we don't have all the answers,
Exactly.
and being open to having our minds changed.
Right. And it's also about finding joy as a form of resistance.
Oh, I love that point.
Because if we get bogged down in the negativity and the outrage
Yeah.
and the helplessness, we lose sight of what we're fighting for.
What are we even fighting for?
Right.
If you lose sight of the things that bring us meaning and happiness.
It's about remembering why we're resisting in the first place.
Yeah.
To create a world where everyone can live freely, authentically, and joyfully.
Yeah.
And that vision, that sense of hope, is what fuels our resistance.
And keeps us going when things feel bleak.
Exactly.
I think that's a beautiful way to frame it.
Yeah.
It's not just about fighting against something, but also fighting for something.
Right.
Fighting for a future where love, compassion, and justice prevail.
And that brings us back to the power of art.
Yeah.
Art can not only expose injustice,
Yeah.
but can also offer us glimpses of that better future.
All right.
It can inspire us,
Yeah.
uplift us,
Yeah.
connect us to something larger than ourselves.
I'm thinking about Kendrick Lamar again. using his platform to speak truth to power at the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Or Nina Simone pouring her heart and soul into songs that challenged racial injustice.
Right.
They weren't just creating art,
Right.
they were creating change.
Exactly. They were using their creativity to challenge the status quo,
Right.
to inspire others to action,
Yeah.
to plant seeds of hope.
In a world that can often feel pretty hopeless.
Yeah, I think that's a powerful message to carry with us as we try to navigate the complexities of this world.
We all have the power to create change, right?
Yeah.
To resist injustice, to build a better future.
Whether it's through art activism or just simply choosing to engage with the world in a more mindful and compassionate way,
Yeah.
we can all make a difference.
Well said.
And I think that's a perfect segue into the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
where we'll explore this idea of creating change even more.
I'm ready. Let's dive in. Okay, so we've talked about art inspiring change and personal responsibility, but like, what does this all look like in the real world? You know, how do we actually take action?
Yeah, it's the big question, right?
Yeah.
But Malone gives us some pretty good ideas. She talks about secular spirituality.
Secular spirituality. Okay, that sounds kind of like an oxymoron.
Right. How can you have spirituality without religion?
Yeah.
But think of it this way. Spirituality is all about connecting to something bigger than yourself, like finding purpose in your life.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be tied to like a church or a specific religious belief.
So it's more about like people finding their own way.
Exactly. It could be through nature, art, meditation. Malone even mentions things like social justice and even psychedelics as like examples of secular spirituality.
Wow. I see how this ties back to personal responsibility. It's about taking charge of your own spiritual journey, right?
Yeah, you got it. It's about developing your own inner wisdom, your own compass for what's right and wrong, finding your own path.
It sounds pretty empowering, but like, can you give me some real world examples?
Sure, think about someone who finds peace in nature, like hiking, gardening, just being outside.
Yeah.
Or someone who volunteers in their community,
Mm-hmm.
wanting to make a difference. Or even someone who meditates to understand themselves better, be more compassionate.
Those are great examples, and I see how these things can bring connection, purpose, even joy. All the stuff we've been talking about, right?
Absolutely. It's like a powerful antidote to that feeling of helplessness you can get, with everything going on around us.
Right.
It reminds us that we have the power to create our own meaning, be resilient.
It makes me think about the artists we discussed. Lamar, Simone, Banksy. Their art wasn't just about expressing themselves, right? It was about making a statement.
Totally. It was about challenging the status quo, getting people to act. It was like a form of secular spirituality, wouldn't you say?
I think so. They were tapping into something bigger, something beyond just them. They used their art to connect with people, start a conversation. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Christianity and politics in America, it seems like we've come full circle. We started with this idea of needing to be saved, needing atonement.
Yeah.
But now it sounds like true freedom comes from within.
You nailed it.
Mhm.
It's about taking control, finding your own wisdom, figuring out what your life means. It could be through secular spirituality, art, being an activist. We all have the power to make a difference.
It's a lot to think about, challenging but hopeful at the same time. It means pushing ourselves, questioning everything, taking responsibility. But it also reminds us that we're not helpless. We can change things, create a better world.
I couldn't agree more.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep exploring, keep diving deep.